Thanks for tuning in for another craft video from the Hornell Area Family YMCA's Virtual Y. I'm Rebecca Weaver-Hom, and our project today is to make a little portable pet bed that you can put in the bottom of your carrier. When my family travels, we travel with our rather arthritic old lady cat in her carrier, and having a nice comfortable padded surface for her to ride on, I think, makes her life a little bit less miserable when we're on those long family road trips. There are lots of ways to do this. One of the absolute simplest is the way that I'm going to do it today, using 2 hand towels and some cotton batting. You could also use a synthetic batting. I wouldn't recommend a wool batting for this because, of course, you want it all to be very washable. But it's really quite straightforward using towels. The first one of these that I ever made, I used a towel and some batting and some fabric, so it has a slightly different surface on the top. But this way is just couldn't be easier. So my hand towels are roughly, very roughly, 16 inches by 28 inches. Standard hand towel, right? Very wild shade of raspberry for this particular one. And so what I did was, after I measured them and decided, of course, they're not perfectly square or anything convenient like that, I went ahead and measured roughly 15 and change by not quite 28-inch pieces of cotton batting from some leftover batting I had. And just because of the way that I happened to have it in my stash, I had 3 layers to work with. So this is going to have 3 layers of batting in between the 2 layers of terry cloth towel. And when I laid it out onto the batting, that is, laid it out onto the first towel, I have the towel so that the right side of the towel is facing my surface and the batting is sitting on top, and I simply went along and just kind of trimmed it a little bit so that it would sit inside all of the hems of the towel. So the towel has a really thick hem on the 2 short ends, and then it also has a rolled hem along the long end, and I have my batting stopping just shy of all of those edges, so that when I sew this together, I'm not going to bother turning it like I might otherwise. I'm just going to be sewing outside the batting, inside the hems of this, and letting the hems be kind of as they are. Or I could go back and finish them with a zigzag stitch if I really, really felt like it. So after I do that much, I'm going to put the second towel on top of the first towel and line up all the edges. And this is where we will find out for sure whether or not these things are fully square and the same size as each other. I'm not sure that they're exactly the same size. I think one is a tiny bit wider than the other. And as I go around, I'm just sort of smoothing it so that the batting is tucked inside. And now I'm going to go ahead and pin it. And I'm going to pin it along the hems to keep them together so that when I sew it, it'll be easy to keep them from slipping. And I'm going to go ahead and pin parallel with the edges, particularly because I'm not going to try to sew over these pins. I'm just going to use them to keep my edges together and my batting from poking out. So as I go around, I'm just going to pin those together so that the edges really line up neatly. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is put some pins across the middle just to hold it in place and keep the whole thing from shifting around while I sew it in the machine. Okay, so now the whole thing is pinned together. I have lots of pins along the long edges because that's where it seems to want to not come together nicely, and a few along the shorter edges. And then I just have a few kind of scattered around the middle so that hopefully it doesn't shift around too much while I'm sewing it together. Now, because the edges of these towels are totally finished, I've prepared it so that the outside, the top side of each towel is on the outside with the batting sandwiched in between. I'm not having to worry about turn it to hide the seams on the inside or anything like that. So I have my right side or my good side or my finished side facing on the outsides of both. And now I'm just going to go all the way around the edges of this with the sewing machine, and that will encase the batting all the way through. And then of course I have to decide how I'm going to totally finish it up, if I'm going to add some more rows of stitching or if I'm just going to tie it or what. That's part of the fun, right? Okay, so now I've been all the way around my towel and the batting is now safely tucked inside where it won't come loose or anything. But to finish this, I have a couple of different options. One is, if I want to, I could do some machine stitching across these dobby borders on both sides of the towel, and I could even put one straight down the middle and basically do a little bit of kind of quick and dirty quilting that way to enclose it. Or instead, I could, keeping my pins in place here, tie it off, and that's what I'm going to do instead. I have some variegated embroidery floss that I've put onto a needle with a fairly large eye because I'm using all 6 strands of this cotton embroidery floss. And the idea behind tying something is it's a quilting technique. It helps to hold stuff together, and you can make this as organized or disorganized as you want in terms of where you place it, how symmetrical it is, but all you do is go down through all layers from the top, leaving a little tail, and then you come right back up fairly close to it with the rest of it. And then we are quite literally just going to tie a little knot in this. And I find it's a little bit easier for me to tie it before I've cut the thread. So you just tie a little square knot in it, and then you clip just like that. So now I have these 2 little strings sticking up on the top, and if you want to, you could tie it to the front or to the back. Frankly, if you're worried that maybe your pet will start chewing on the little ends, then you might want to go ahead and tie it instead of on the top of your little pet bed, portable pet bed. You might want to tie it on the back instead so that they don't have those little ends to grip. My cat is pretty good about leaving these kinds of things alone. So again, I just come down through all the layers and up again. I was actually a little closer than I want to be, a short distance away. Pull it all the way up and then tie a knot. The other nice thing is I left my little end a little too short to really grab and tie well, and so I could just pull it back through a little tiny bit to get enough to hold on to for my big fingers. Okay, so there we go. And again, cut it about the same length as the other one and go on from here. You can space them as closely as you want. You don't have to make it super close. The big thing here is that tying this will prevent the batting from shifting around while your pet is lying on it, or more importantly, if it ever has to be laundered. So the other good thing to know, of course, is to pre-launder everything, including the batting if you can, so that it won't shrink at different rates when you wash it later on. And hopefully my cat will enjoy using this to ride in style for her next long car ride. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the rest of our videos from our virtual YMCA from the Hornell Area Family YMCA. Take care.